Hello, dear friends. We live in a world of deception because things are never what they seem, but it is more convenient to buy prefabricated versions of reality than to take the trouble to investigate the truth for oneself, although the lie always takes a toll of much suffering. Opinion article. Are we living in a simulation? The documentary A Fault in the Matrix asks the question. To simulate is to represent something pretending or imitating what it is not. The simulation theory postulates that all reality is illusory. This theory is nowadays in vogue due to the subjectivity of society. The Tale of Isis and Plato's allegory of the cave speak of the same thing. Our collective sense of an objective reality is currently very tenuous. The pursuit of artificial intelligence is one of the most important battles. The main maintainer of the matrix is Germany because of its great credulity. The German people trust their mind more than their intuition and their big heart. There are two different types of financial reboots: the good, the ugly, the bad, and the worst. The instant concept of Maya connotes a spectacle of magic, illusion, and deception. The cessation of ignorance can only come when I discover that I am God are one. Repeat. The cessation of ignorance can only come when I discovered that I and God are one. Let's start. In the same week that the New York Times published an article where experts called for a so-called reality czar, a documentary was released that questioned the nature of reality. The documentary, A Glitch in the Matrix, directed by Rodney Ascher and available on video on demand, examines simulation theory, the idea that all of our reality would be an artificial computer simulation, something like a giant video game. Science fiction writer Philip Dick provides the narrative structure for the documentary, and the film's title is based on the screenplay for the movie The Matrix. The concept that humanity today could be living in a computer simulation was proposed by philosophy professor Nick Bostrom. This simulation theory has generated a lot of interest among programmers and entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. Bostrom's thesis is that since it can be reasonably believed that advanced civilizations run sophisticated simulations, and that we are likely living in a simulation of a more advanced civilization with immense computing power. Definition. To simulate is to represent something, pretending or imitating what it is not. According to Shannon, simulation is the process of designing a model of a real system and conducting experiments with it in order to understand the behavior of the system or to evaluate new strategies for operating the system. Thomas Goldsmith, Jr. and Ethel Rayman define it as follows. Simulation is a numerical technique for conducting experiments on a digital computer. These experiments involve certain types of mathematical and logical relationships, which are necessary to describe the behavior and structure of the complex real-world system over long periods. Simulation theory is topical because our collective sense of an objective reality is currently very tenuous, due to the continual elevation of subjective experience in our culture. With the mainstream media becoming a manipulation machine and social networks further dividing us by acting as a reinforcement mechanism for subjective experience, it seems almost impossible to find a consensus to adequately agree on an objective reality. To the simplists who say that there is only one truth, theirs, of course, I always reply that truth is like a diamond with many faces, and each one sees a different facet of the same diamond. As Ramón de Campoamor said, in this treacherous world, there is neither truth nor lie. Everything is according to the color of the glass with which one looks at it. Experiences. Ridwan Birk, a computer scientist and video game developer, published a new book dealing with this topic, The Simulation Hypothesis, which uses many arguments to support the theory that we humans would live in a large, highly sophisticated simulation. Birk related an experience that influenced him in writing the book. He explained that he played ping-pong in virtual reality and found it so realistic he completely forgot he was in a simple room, wearing virtual reality goggles. At the end of the game, Birk tried to lean on the virtual table and almost fell to the floor, as the table didn't really exist. This experience was shocking to the scientist, as he realized that video games could become so real that we might not be able to distinguish them from reality. Another example of subjective experience trumping objective reality is in our culture is identity and transgenderism. In its most rudimentary form, the argument that trans advocates make is based on getting others to conform to their subjective experience at the expense of a consensual objective reality. The problem arises when the trans advocates demand that others accept their subjective experience at the expense of ignoring objective physical reality. For example, a person who was born with male genitalia, who claims to have been born in the wrong body, and now identifies as a female. No doubt that may be this subjective experience, and he is entitled to it. But that's not the objective reality. Proponents of the hypothesis. The questions of our reality being an illusion is more substantial than science fiction musings, as philosophers have pondered it over the centuries. Plato's cave and Descartes' evil demon are two prime examples, and a smart modern male-like philosopher Nick Bostrom and entrepreneur Elon Musk are as well. Elon Musk has suggested that we are most likely made in a simulation, simply because of the high volume of intelligent life that should be in the universe. In a podcast with Joe Rogan, SpaceX chief Elon Musk said, "If you assume some rate of enhancement, games will eventually be undistinguishable from reality," before concluding that we are most likely in a simulation. Another high-profile proponent of the hypothesis is famed astrophysical Neil deGrasse Tyson, who said in an interview with NBC News that the hypothesis is correct, adding, "I wish I could master a solid argument against it, but I can't find one." Economist Robin Hanson argues that an occupant interested in a high-definition simulation should strive to be entertaining and praiseworthy to avoid being turned off or shunted to an unaware low-definition part of the simulation. Artificial intelligence. Dangers of artificial intelligence. With artificial intelligence constantly advancing, there has been growing concern about how much innovation is too much. Cybersecurity expert Morgan Wright offers his forecast for the industry. The pursuit of artificial intelligence is currently one of the biggest battles between countries around the world, he says, adding that we are dealing with two forms of artificial intelligence, the narrow or weak form and artificial intelligence in general. The first form is very much based on machine learning. That do we tell it? What do we instruct it to do? In the end, where this is going is general artificial intelligence. Wright explains that governments are trying to come up with a very powerful, omniscient and omnipotent type of artificial general intelligence, which would be used for military purposes, espionage, economics, banking, finance, and things like that. He adds that if you program it biases, it will act according to its programming. But as it gets smarter, as it gets better, you will see us move from this narrow artificial intelligence to what's called artificial general intelligence. And that's where the real danger lies, in that what artificial intelligence can do in terms of population control. In my opinion, this kind of intelligence can escape from our hands. Simulation theory. The simulation hypothesis of simulation theory is the proposal that all of reality, including the Earth and the rest of the universe, could in fact be an artificial simulation, such as a computer simulation. Some versions are based on the development of simulated reality, a proposed technology that could combine its inhabitants, that the simulation would be real. The hypothesis was popularized in its current form by Nick Bostrom. The suggestion that such a hypothesis is compatible with all of our perceptual experiences is believed to have significant consequences in the form of philosophical skepticism. Versions of the hypothesis have also been featured in science fiction, appearing as a central plot device in many stories and movies. There is a long philosophical and scientific history to the thesis that reality would be an illusion. This skeptical hypothesis goes back to antiquity. For example, with the butterfly dream of the Taoist sage Zhuangzi, or the Hindu philosophy of Maya, or in ancient Greek philosophy Anaxarchus and Monimus, compared existing things to the painting of a scene and assumed that they resembled impressions experienced in dreams or madness. Science fiction has highlighted themes such as virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and video games for more than 50 years. Isaac Asimov's Jockester explores the idea that humor would actually be a psychological study tool imposed from outside by other world beings who would study humankind much as humans study mice. Daniel Galloway Simulacrum 3, 1964, tells the story of a virtual city developed as a computer simulation for market research purposes, in which the simulated inhabitant possesses consciousness. All but one of the inhabitants are unaware of the true nature of their world. In 1993, Star Trek The Next Generation episode Ship in a Bottle explored the idea that people are unaware that they are living in a simulation, with Picard postulating at the end that perhaps they are also in a simulation taking place in a box on a table. This is also a possible use of dramatic irony, as both the actors and the audience are aware that the television program is in fact a simulation of sorts. The same theme was repeated in the 1999 film The Matrix, which depicted a world in which artificially intelligent robots enslaved humanity within a simulation set in the contemporary world. The Veil of Isis, the first to enunciate in the West the basic instant concept of reality, was a simulation as a simulation was the famous philosopher classical Plato in 380 before Christ in the famous allegory of the cave, which describes people imprisoned since childhood, leading to the belief that representations of reality based on artificial light would actually be real when, in fact, they were a fabricated illusion. The veil of Isis is another metaphor of an allegorical artistic motive in which nature is personified as the goddess Isis, covered with a veil or cloak, representing the inaccessibility of nature's secrets. Only the tearing of the veil can bring the being to a higher state of spiritual awareness. Oriental wisdom or Eastern wisdom. The Eastern concept of Maya connotes a magic show, an illusion in which things appear to be present, but are not what they appear to be. Maya is also a spiritual concept that connotes that which exists but is constantly changing and therefore spiritually unreal, and the power or principle that hides the true character of a spiritual reality. Maya means that the world is not what it seems, that the world one experiences is deceptive as to its true nature. In the monistic school of Hindu Advaita Vedanta philosophy, Maya is the powerful force that creates the cosmic illusion that the phenomenal world is real. I call it God playing hide and seek. The Upanishads, here are the Upanishads, my book. Secret Doctrines of India, Upanishads, describe the universe and human experience as an interplay of Purusha and Prakriti, consciousness and matter, Atman and Maya. The Upanishads refer to knowledge of Atman as true knowledge, Vidya or Gnosis, and knowledge of Maya as untrue knowledge, Avidya or Agnosis. For the Upanishads, wisdom includes empirical knowledge and spiritual knowledge, and complete knowledge necessarily includes the understanding of the hidden principles at work, as well as the realization of the soul of things. Swami Vivekananda said that the Vedas cannot show you Brahman, God, because you are really that. They can only help to remove the veil that hides the truth from our eyes. The cessation of ignorance can only come when I know that I am God are one. I repeat it. The cessation of ignorance can only come when I know that I and God are one. In other words, identify yourself with the Atman, not with human limitations. The idea that we are bound is only an illusion. Freedom is inseparable from the nature of the Atman. This is always pure, always perfect, always immutable. Buddhism. The Avatamsaka Sutra, translated by Thomas Creasley, here it is, the flower ornament scripture, a translation of the Avatamsaka Sutra, Thomas Cleary, is the grandest, the most complete, and the most beautiful of the Buddhist scriptures, in his opinion. It describes a cosmos of infinite realms upon realms, which contain each other. It is characterized by overflowing visionary images, multiplying everything to infinity, by a kind of monadology. The monad is each of the indivisible substances, but of distinct nature, that make up the universe. According to the system of Leibniz, the 17th century German philosopher and mathematician. The Avatamsaka Sutra teaches the interpretation of the one whole and the particularized many of spirit and matter, and the notion of a gradual process towards liberation through successive stages, and an obsessive preference for images of light and radiance in a fractal, holographic, and psychedelic worldview. It also highlights the visionary and mystical power of attaining a spiritual wisdom that sees the nature of the world. Germany. In my opinion, the main country maintaining the matrix would be Germany, followed by its European partners. Germans are the most gullible in the system and in the official authority. Despite being Protestant, they are more Papist than the Pope, more Orthodox than the Greeks and the Russians, and more easily deceived than any other European people. We Spaniards are also very conformist, but somewhat more resentful and rebellious at heart, like all Latin and Mediterranean peoples. At such moments, I remember a quote attributed to Napoleon Bonaparte. There is no kinder people, but no more credulous people than the Germans. I have never had to sow discord among them. I need only spread my nets, and they will run like timid animals. Among themselves they drowned, and though they were doing their duty, and thought they were doing their duty. More foolish is no other people on earth. No lie can be invented crudely enough. The Germans believed it. By slogan given to end, they persecuted their countrymen more bitterly than their real enemies. Close quotes. This is the opinion of Napoleon. According to the German Stefan, most Germans are still so naive to this day that they fight among themselves, at least in words, because they trust their minds, stamped with prejudices and falsifications, rather than their intuition and their hearts. There are doubts among the silent mass, but it remains mute. The good, the ugly, and the bad. There are two different types of financial resets: the good, the ugly, the bad, and the WestJet, according to Jared Rand. In the good one, money is backed by assets and precious metals. It is untaxed. National currencies are respected. There are humanitarian projects. Fiat money disappears, and the bad guys go out of business. In the ugly, the bad, and the West, which is the Davos Forum Great Reset project, money is not backed by active assets and precious metals. Money remains fiat, but a single world currency is imposed, 80% taxed or more, and the bad guys put money back in their account. Finally, you would be left with some crumbs to keep you from starving. The only reason this negative scenario is exposed is because the bad economic reboot will be offered before the good one is offered. So, don't be fooled by the phony reset surrogate, because they have tried to lie for 11 years. So, what happens when you kick your dog every week for 11 years straight? The logical thing to do would be for that dog to want to bite you in the face, logically. Thanks a lot, dear friends, and thanks for your attention.